the family and painting this guy as, they're showing his high school, photo. They're showing, this guy is an upstanding member of the community. And the officers are saying, sorry, Rick, and Rick didn't know him that well. They're just sitting in a courtroom together and says, that's not the guy that we encountered that night. And he goes, as a matter of fact, he goes, one of the officers said, I've been on the job for 26 years. He goes, and that night, he goes, and I've never really been afraid for my life. Like that night, I was afraid for my life because this guy was like possessed. Like I've never seen something like it. And so Rick goes, well, the family and the attorneys are able to present this one image of the guy. And then you guys are using very, as you know, from being on the stand, very clinical, very precise language, using very precise language about what happened that night. And it just wasn't painting a good picture for the officers. And so it was then Rick's like, well, we got to put cameras on tasers. We have to record what's happening in these encounters so that the world can see like officers are not abusing citizens with tasers or doing bad things. That's what started the body camera business right there. Other side was that was a hands up, don't shoot moment. And so if you believe it, like he had his hands up, if you believe the narrative, he had his hands up and he was shot down in cold blood. Now, I think the facts of the case and all the investigations afterwards show that the officer was indeed right in telling the truth. But in that moment, it was all you had was, which side of the story do you believe? That was the case where we saw body cameras just take off because that was when officers and departments like, no, we have to record these incidents, these situations, so that everyone can see like what's happening. Killing is a technology problem. Like we're still blowing holes in people with chunks of lead. Technology that's been around, invented by the Chinese over 1,000 years ago. Like, why haven't we evolved as technology around us is evolving so quickly? How have we not evolved to produce a better weapon? And more specifically, as you start thinking about it, produce a better weapon for police where they don't have to take a life.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community, and now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree, and we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
This is a story that began with a tragedy in the desert and ended with a global mission to protect life. Two brothers could not sit by and do nothing after gun violence struck close to home. On a cool Arizona day in 1991, this tragedy struck. Two friends from their high school football team, Todd and Corey, were killed in a road rage incident. The weapon of choice was a gun. In that moment, a future was set. A simple, radical idea was born from grief. What if there is another way? A way to stop a threat without taking a life? Driven by desire to innovate their way out of tragedy. The work was done in a garage, bootstrapping the project with family savings. The financial risk was immense, but the mission was hell-bent on building a less lethal device for conflict resolution by using energy to subdue a violent offender. But like all great minds, this led to looking at the bigger picture, the entire ecosystem of law enforcement and public safety. Today, this brand tackles energy weapons, body cameras, real-time situational awareness, and they are even working to improve the wellness of the first responder community. As the need for public safety increases, and police accountability has never been more important in our society, We, the first responder community, will always look at one brand as a trusted source for answers. We will look at the brand that always will find an answer to make the world safer and better. The brand we trust and turn to is known as Axon. Welcome back for another message from the host. Today we have a real honor of sitting down with a company that I think anybody in law enforcement and the first responder world has heard of. But first, I want to welcome on my co-host, Danny Canetti's here on the mic, and also Kent Wolverton. We have a very special guest, Mike Wagers. He's the Chief Customer Officer and co-host of the Axon Boldly Go podcast. Mike, thank you for being with us.
Hey guys, excited to be with you.
Yeah, where are you located? Where are you at right now?
I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is where our headquarters, our global headquarters, is located.
Okay. Where you? When did you join Axon?
Yeah, I joined Axon in 2017. I mean, the interesting thing was I was hired, and all my paperwork said TASER International. So I was hired by TASER. I show up the first day of orientation, and it was first week in April. And on that Monday, we go get our badges made because we're at our headquarters, and you're doing all the things that you do when you go to an orientation. There's a big class of us. Probably 30 of us, 35 people, but they didn't give us the badges right then. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. And then we go through the rest of the first day in terms of just regular orientation, HR, here are your benefits. The very next day, they, instead of starting in the classroom that we had been in, we all go out to our headquarters. We had this big atrium with a screen and everything else. And we have a press conference. And the press conference that Tuesday, Monday was the first day of orientation. The press conference on that Tuesday was we were changing our name from TASER International to Axon. And so after that was over, they came out and gave us our badges. And we were the first group that got Axon badges. So I was hired under TASER back in 2017, but quickly became one of the first employees, at least in terms of getting the badge of Axon.
Nice. That's yeah. Hang on to that first badge. Did you get grandfathered in anything?
I actually did. It finally fell apart on me just 2 or 3 months ago. So I did have to go get a new badge because it just kind of fell apart. But I actually still have it. I thought about getting it, put a little nice little frame, but I still have it with me.
So I want to go back to when you began. When did you? Why did you join Axon?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so I back in, it was probably 2011. I was the director of the state provincial division at IECP. So I was at IECP for 4 years as mainly, again, working with state provincial agencies, the 49 state police colonels here in the US, and then several agencies in Canada. And all the colonels this 1 year for their mid-year conference wanted to hear from CEOs. Like they've heard from the DHS secretary, they'd heard from FBI director 1,000 times. They all, been to many of these conferences. And so they said, hey, we want to learn some leadership lessons from the private sector. Go find some CEOs, Mike. I was like, okay. So I didn't know anybody. I saw our Motorola rep, and I was like, hey, can you get your CEO to come talk to these colonels? And he got it lined up. And then at the time, this was back when it was TASER, and again, semi early days, I knew one guy, one rep who used to come to these IECP meetings. His name was Brian Black. I'm like, Brian, I don't even know who your CEO is, but like, can he come to this conference and talk to all these colonels? And he gets them lined up. Now, again, these are state police colonels, and this is also 2011. So, kind of back in the day, they wear suits. There's a very structured agenda. My job as the director is to try to keep to keep the trains on schedule. Like we start when it says we start, we end when it says we end, and we do not go over. And so Rick Smith, the founder and CEO of TASER, now Axon, we had him on the agenda. And we're going to him coming out of a break. So all morning long, I don't see this guy. I don't even know what he looks like. I just keep looking over at Brian, the rep, like, where is your guy? Because again, like these are state police colonels, and I'm, much younger at the time. And he goes, he'll be here, he'll be here. So during the break, I'm like, Brian, go get your guy. Like we have to have this guy ready to roll. Again, think about this in 2011 or so. Like AV doesn't exactly work really well in hotels. Like sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You can't just walk in and plug your laptop up. So this guy walks in literally 60 seconds before we're starting. Now all the colonels were sitting down because they start on time. He's walking in and he has his laptop in one hand with all kinds of wires hanging from it. He has an Axon, or at the time TASER, a flex camera on his shoulder, one of the prototypes, and he is wearing a pair of Google glasses. I don't know if you remember Google glasses, like all the nerds had them. They thought it was going to be the thing. And I'm just looking at this guy going, and he's walking, up to the front. I'm like, this is going to be an utter disaster. And like these colonels are going to be so pissed at me. He walks up there, plugs in, and it magically works, and delivers to this day a presentation that many of the people in that room still remember about the future of technology and the future of public safety technology. And I just remember sitting there at that time. I was like, I want to go work for that guy, and I want to be a part of that. So that's how it started. I did some other things between IACP and getting to Axon, but it was that moment watching that presentation going, that's what I want to be a part of.
No, that's amazing. So, anybody listens to my the show here, they understand that I like history, and I did a lot of research on the history of TASER and Axon. Can you tell the listener a little bit about when it all started in '93?
Sure, yeah. Started back in 1993. I mean, it's a very interesting story. I mean, Rick, our founder and CEO, he was a young kid coming out of college. And sort of the joke is he's never had another job. Like this is his job. Like he's never done anything else. He went to college, by the way, and the essay that he wrote back when you had to write essays, I guess, I don't know what they do today, of, why they should accept him, was he essentially said he wanted to build Luke Skywalker's robotic arm, if you remember from Star Wars.
I remember. Empire Strikes Back.
Now, he didn't say Luke Skywalker's robotic arm, but he wanted to build robotic limbs, and like he was into that. And he's obviously very big into sci-fi. So he goes to college and he starts thinking about what he's going to do. And the story's been told a number of times. While he was in graduate school in Europe, some of his European friends, they were talking about the gun violence problem in the U.S. And Rick's like, no, that's the movies. You don't understand. It's like, it's not the Wild West. It's not what you see. It's just like that. It's not back then, what you see on TVs and the movies. And then they said, well, Rick, do you know of anybody who's ever been killed or been involved in gun violence? And he thought about it for a second, and he had like two guys that he knew in high school that played on the football team. They got involved in essentially a road rage incident here in Scottsdale, Arizona, a golf community, a resort town. They cut somebody off, or I don't remember the story. They get out of the car. The guy has a gun in his glove box. A businessman, like pulls the gun. These guys are, kind of big football players. Escalates. The guy shoots both of them. So those two guys are dead, and this guy is spending his life in prison. It was that conversation that started thinking about that. And Rick's like, whoa, I do know, like, I do know people that have been affected by gun violence. And that got him thinking about the problem of gun violence, and more specifically, the problem of killing. And again, think like, just like if you want to go build Luke Skywalker's robotic arm, I mean, Rick is big into sci-fi. And what he sort of started thinking about was like, killing is a technology problem. Not sure everything that goes around it, the people and the motives and intent and the emotion, but at the heart of it, and the way he started thinking about it was like, we're still, and at the time in the late 80s, early 90s, as he's thinking about this, like we're still blowing holes in people with chunks of lead. Technology that's been around, invented by the Chinese over 1,000 years ago. Like, why haven't we evolved as technology around us is evolving so quickly, and internet's exploding, everything's going on? How have we not evolved to produce a better weapon, and more specifically, as they started thinking about it, produce a better weapon for police where they don't have to take a life. Or what if you could give them, Captain Kirk's phaser from Star Trek? He would never blow a hole in Klingons, right? Like his,
Right.
and as he started talking about it, and like as a police officer, you use lethal force. Why? Because it's effective. Like that is what if you have to stop a threat, like that is the only thing that we've given you today that you feel confident can stop a lethal threat. You have to use lethal violence as well. And we're not criticizing that. Like we just have not. No one's provided the field technology where you could use something else to stop that lethal threat. So that's how he got started in the mentality around sort of started researching taser weapons and what was out there at the time. What could you do, and how can you sort of maybe start tackling this problem for the good of society?
Yeah, and I read that also there was a NASA scientist that had already working on energy gun.
Yeah, no, it's right. It was the first taser. Like taser existed before Rick got involved. He started looking up like what's out there, like what are people doing, what could he get involved in, and sort of maybe help solve this problem. And he finds out this guy Jack Cover, who is a beautiful story because the guy worked on the Apollo missions for NASA. He was a rocket scientist, quite literally. So he was involved in the first, and what we think of as sort of that moonshot mission to send man to the moon. And it turns out he lived here in Arizona, which is where Rick lived at the time. So Rick goes, and this is back in the day, and not sure the demographic of your listeners, but some of them will certainly know this. You and I would know this, but many young officers will not. Like he calls 411 on the telephone, and someone picks it. He asks for Jack Cover's address, and back then they gave it to you, our phone number, and then he gets the address. And they gave it to him. Like he tells that story today, and like I just watched, especially some of our younger employees, I had no idea what 411 is before the internet, where you could just look everything up. He goes, knocks on his door, and so there's this. I think Jack at the time was 73 years old, and Rick was 23 years old. So here's this young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kid ready to go change the world. And then here's this grizzly 73-year-old scientist that's done just some incredible things and had invented the first taser device, but it wasn't working. He was frustrated. He tried and he tried and he tried, and they got together. And that's where sort of taser took off from there.
Was handed off tech, and also I would imagine Rick probably gravitated even more knowing it was actually somebody from NASA. Being into science fiction. It seems like a lot of stars aligned.
No, yeah, it's an incredible story, and just the imagery of picturing this this kid knocking on this guy's door, and then you always hear about startups. Working out of a garage, Steve Jobs and all the sort of the famous companies, they literally worked out of a garage in Tucson, Arizona, to start improving on some of the original designs that Jack had. And there's this, again, I'm just picturing this image of this sort of, 73-year-old scientist who have been involved in NASA and the Apollo mission. And here's this guy straight out of college, one, we should do this, we should do that. And, tinkering with the device in a garage here in Arizona.
We were talking a little bit before we started this whole deal about how the word taser is actually an acronym.
Yeah.
Could you explain the acronym?
Yeah. Well, it's even better part of the story. It's a great part of the sort of the origin story. Like everyone doesn't realize, and that's one reason we capitalize taser in all our writings for a variety of reasons too. But it is an acronym, Jack Cover at the time when he founded sort of the original company, I forget the name, but it was another acronym involving it just, you couldn't say it. It didn't make sense. And then it turns out Jack had gotten the inspiration in the name from these dime store novels from like the early part of the 20th century. It was called Tom Smith's electric rifle, Thomas A. Smith electric rifle. That is TASER. Like that came from that novel where here's this guy, and at the time, this is the thing about the turn of the 20th century in the early 1900s. This is this guy's going on adventures, and he has at the time an electric rifle, and that is his thing. And so they just took the acronym from the title of the book, which is again Thomas A. Smith's electric rifle, and just called it TASER.
So that leads me to another question. We changed the name from TASER International to Axon. What is the significance of the word Axon?
Yeah, great question. And so TASER didn't take off right away. Like in '93, the company starts, had a number of failures until they finally figured out how to get it right. And think back again, like a lot of people, especially in the '90s, think about TASER and Rodney King, and that was before Rick and Jack got together. That was one of the earlier devices. And the problem there in the Rodney King incident and all the prior versions until they finally got it right was it was underpowered. That they had not done the research to show how much electricity does it take to cause neuroincapacitation. That's what a TASER does. It's not pain compliance. You're not electrocuting somebody. You're shooting those probes into the body, stimulating the nerves, and you lock up the nerves just like this, and that's what causes that incapacitation. So number of failures. Company obviously, not obviously, the company almost goes under a number of times. Like it is a surprise that it actually made it to where it is today. But as TASERs became more successful, and as police around the country and the world started carrying TASERs, the company TASER, the company, and officers and departments were getting sued. And they were getting sued saying officers are abusing this weapon. Like they are being abusive. They are torturing people. And Rick at the time and others, like they knew that's not true. Just like you guys know that's not true. Like that can't be the case, that there are all these bad officers out there doing these bad things. But sort of the anti-police groups, plaintiff lawyers and others who had this narrative. And Rick was involved, and we would always go in and with the officers and defend these lawsuits because company wasn't going to back down. We're going to stand behind the product, and we're going to defend the officers who use the product in the right way. And one of the moments he was in California, I forget the city, and two officers were being accused of abusing the suspect who dies. Now he was a heavy PCP user, like lifelong, rap sheet mile long, all the things that we know, and he dies like I don't know the exact time, but it's not instantaneously. Like, and that tells you a little something about how TASERs, like they're blaming TASERs and the officers. The guy dies, like hours later after the incident. Now, in the courtroom, the family and painting this guy as, they're showing his high school, photo. They're showing, this guy is an upstanding member of the community. And the officers are sitting beside Rick. And Rick didn't know him that well. They're just sitting in a courtroom together and says, that's not the guy that we encountered that night. And he goes, as a matter of fact, one of the officers said, I've been on the job for 26 years. He goes, and that night, he goes, and I've never really been afraid for my life. Like that night, I was afraid for my life because this guy was like possessed. Like I've never seen something like it. And so Rick goes, well, the family and the attorneys are able to present this one image of the guy. And then you guys are using very, as you know, from being on the stand, very clinical, very precise language, using very precise language about what happened that night. And it just wasn't painting a good picture for the officers. And so it was then Rick's like, well, we got to put cameras on TASERs. We have to record what's happening in these encounters so that the world can see like officers are not abusing citizens with TASERs or doing bad things. That's what started the body camera business right there. Like we started body cameras. We started the body camera industry to show that officers are doing the right thing when it came to using tasers. So the body camera business, they start doing body cameras, they try taser cams, and they try all kinds of things. And there's a whole lesson there in terms of a bunch of failures. And it's losing money. The company's about to go out of business. There's a revolt within the company at the time saying, when are you going to shut down this crazy camera and video business? Like, it's sinking the company, because tasers are selling well. Tasers are doing great. Tasers are supporting the company. And you had, but you're a weapons company. And Rick had a moment, goes to a company meeting, and he puts up an image of Cortez, essentially like history, and burning the ships. And he goes, guys, we're not going back. We're burning the ships. We are going into the camera and the video and the digital evidence management business along with Taser. Now, to do that, there had to be a shift from the name, because everyone obviously knows tasers as electrical weapons, to seeing us as different, not only taser, but also getting into body cameras, software. And so that was the switch to Axon. And there's a number of reasons, but for example, for us to continue to grow and succeed, we needed investors and shareholders to see that we were a serious software company. Because at the time, and maybe today, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, if you're the largest weapons, like not Colt and the others, they were valued at about 1.5 billion. Like today, we're valued at around, I don't check the stock price often, but around 55 billion. Like, you can't operate as a weapons company and grow and have investors invest money in you when the only thing you're doing is weapons. So we made that switch because it was more, the company became more than just, and that's still a foundational core thing that we do. And we're very proud of it, but it was growing so much that we had to transition from Taser to the name Axon, which also had, sort of tied into the Axon, that the biological name of Axon.
What a visionary approach to have every piece of tech that the world has always had a beginning, and it had something that inspired someone to create. And when body cameras, when I first started hearing, because I started in policing in '97, so I was old school, and the thought of having a camera, I could speak whenever DPD, we started hearing we're going to go to body cams. Initially, people were worried. It's, oh my gosh, we're going to be on video. But now, after it's becoming a way of life here in policing, that people don't want to go on the streets without them.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, we're very close with the National Fraternal Order of Police. A lot of things with them. We work closely with them to understand, their, 375,000 members, and sort of the concerns, or not, I would say concerns, but we always seek their input on things that we do. And they would, just like we do, police chiefs and sheriffs, and we try to get input from everyone involved in policing. But they are a very close partner, and they would say, just not too recently, the executive director, Jim Pascoe, said, we were against body cameras until we weren't. And now you guys try to take a body camera from any of our members, and there will be a fight on your hands. And they didn't take off until, and you probably know this, they really didn't take off until the Michael Wilson case. That was the turning point for body cameras. Because if you remember the case, the officer was in fear for his life. This bigger suspect, the guy was reaching and trying to get his gun. He's wrestling for his life. He shoots him. Other side was, no, that was a hands up, don't shoot moment. And so if you believe it, he had his hands up. If you believe the narrative, he had his hands up, and he was shot down in cold blood. Now, I think the facts of the case and all the investigations afterwards show that the officer was indeed right in telling the truth. But in that moment, it was, all you had was, which side of the story do you believe? And then people are going to come down on sort of their biases and their narratives and the media and everything else. That was the case where we saw body cameras just take off, because that was when officers and departments no, we have to record these incidents, these situations, so that everyone can see what's happening. And the funny thing is, if you remember, you certainly remember at the time, then everyone's like I'm talking about the critics, like put body cameras on every pop out there. It's going to show all the bad things they're doing, and we're gonna root out all the evil. We're gonna get all those bad cops out of here. Well, fast forward, and so like all these advocates, if you want to use some kind of term, I would call them adversaries or police critics, who have a very different view on policing. They were 100% behind body cameras. Well, what happened? Like fast forward, like today, they are coming out against body cameras because they're not finding what all these bad cops out there. So it must be the cameras are defective. Must be the officers are not recording all the time. It must be that something else is happening. But the body cameras, and there's articles out there, they're not the panacea to root out police corruption. When maybe an abuse, when maybe the majority of cops do the right thing. They're showing the cops, just like in the Michael Wilson case, doing what they should be doing and policing the way they should police and not abusing citizens, et cetera. And I'm not saying like there aren't cases out there for sure. And without a doubt, and cameras capture them, like in Memphis, for example.
Oh yeah.
Like it's just sort of watch the pendulum swing back the other way. Like, wait a minute, something must be wrong because you're not finding all these bad cops out there.
Yeah, it didn't fit the narrative, and
Nope, it does not fit the narrative. And I'll tell you one thing where I think we see the industry going is because now there's a million officers around the world wearing our body cameras. We're ingesting more video than Netflix and YouTube. Like, no, it's not like nobody's watching it. Like, it's not like we can't see the video. We're just housing, hosting that data, but we're larger than Netflix and YouTube when it comes to how much video we ingest because of a million plus officers around the world, uploading 2 to 3 hours a day of, their shift. Where we think that sort of the next step, and we're seeing it, and I think we're going to see the same arc is around live streaming. And, it's been out for a couple of years. And in the beginning, there's a lot of concerns. That's why we work with police unions and others. Like, you don't want a supervisor, looking over your shoulder. You don't want to try to catch, the officer doing, just some minor things or going to the bathroom or things like that. I think what we're seeing in live streaming, and we're seeing it case after case, is an officer safety issue and the saving lives. And where you can't get an officer on the radio, supervisor, or the real-time crime center or dispatch live streams in and sees what's happening. And I can't tell you how many cases we've seen where an officer's been in a fight for their life, couldn't hit the radio, they see they're in a fight live streaming, and they get resources there. I think that's sort of the next frontier. And again, back to working with our friends at the Fraternal Order of Police, they think the day will come where live streaming is going to be the sort of same mantra about body cameras. Like, try to take live streaming away from the officers because it's saving lives.
Yeah, and as the real time situational awareness, the streaming that is the future, I believe, and it's not just the initial interaction with officers and the citizens out in the street, but also from a evidentiary standpoint, by detectives can go back and review body cams and pick up evidence to further investigate and further an investigation and solve cases.
Sure. We just had 45 prosecutors here at our headquarters this week. We bring folks into our office and like that on a regular. We had 2 groups coming in where we once show them what we have today, but more like talk about what's coming in the future and how we could continue to support and better support police and the rest of the justice system. Because think about these prosecutors, they're just the mountain of data coming to them.
Yes,
it's already a tsunami. I don't know what comes after a tsunami. I don't know what's bigger than the tsunami or the metaphor, but like it's just only going to increase. But so we try to build tools for investigators and then prosecutors about how not just to manage all this data, which is just a monumental task. Like a human no longer can do this anymore because of the mountain of digital evidence. But also then, to your point, how do you uncover the things that need to be uncovered and if there's 10 officers on the scene, if there's CCTV, whatever it may be, if there's cell phone video or cell phone pictures, everything that goes into a case file, how do you uncover if you're an investigator to make sure you have all the right pieces to, to close that case and to get the right bad guys off the street. And then when it gets to prosecution, like how can they put all these puzzle pieces together which it just seems it's not humanly possible today, given this tsunami that's already there, in a way that they could prosecute cases and and again get the bad guys off the street.
Yeah, I worked in a legal division before I started in the wellness unit. That's where we're at now, and I legal oversaw the entire Dallas Police Department's case filing system, and I could tell you that the digital media evidence that we had to get over to the DAs, the storage was a huge problem initially, but now I know the evidence.com and basically everything is pushed over into that. But the amount of evidence, ring cameras that have to be uploaded, cell phone footage, surveillance footage, body cams, and some body cams were not tagged properly because the human error. It is a just a mountain that almost seems like you're not going to get to the top of in some cases.
I was just in the Dallas County DA's office 2 weeks ago, so I am very familiar with the challenges there specifically, but it's not unlike many other places around the country.
I'd imagine.
I mean, they, but the challenge and is there in some other places is if you think about us if you think about Axon as a company, we were there for tasers, starting sort of the move to less lethal devices, and then we care deeply about that. And like, how can we continue to give officers the right technology, the best technology, to protect life? That we believe in that. If you talk to anybody in our building, they will tell you what our mission is. So we were there for that. We were there for the body camera business, and we were there, and so we started the body camera business, but not only started the body camera business. There was a fundamental decision made there that also helped change the trajectory of a lot of other things, and that is we pushed to go to the cloud. And at the time, that was crazy talk. And we, like no one knew what the cloud was at the time. Like, or many people, I should say, no one, but especially in this industry, like you're used to like collecting evidence, guns and drugs, putting in it where like a physical, room, lock it under lock and key. Like that's the way you think about evidence at the time. But as we were starting on the body camera business, trying to figure this out, a couple things. One, we knew from TASER business, like every TASER device going back to the beginning has a log on it, so that you can tell a variety of different things about its use in terms of its charge, when it's charged, all that stuff, which is very important in terms if there's if a TASER device is deployed, or if there's some sort of critical incident, you can go back and get the log, you can put the pieces together along with other evidence. We used to mail out, I don't know if you remember the AOL days. We used to mail out a CD with every TASER, to every department. And we'd say, hey, these TASER devices have these really important logs. Like, you will need this if something happens. Here's the CD, load it on your computer. If there's an incident, you plug the TASER device into the computer, it downloads the logs, and you can see it on the software. No one used this. No one would do that, or very few would do that. And it's because, like, a couple of reasons. Like think about a big department like Dallas. Like, you have IT staff. Like, we're not loading somebody else's software on some computer, or we're not going to let somebody do that. And then think about smaller departments who don't have IT staff. They're like, might be a sergeant doing it, or I'm not doing that. We would literally have departments FedEx the TASER device itself back to Arizona for us to download it, print out the logs, to then ship everything back to them, or fax it probably back in the day. So we knew that it was hard to get IT departments and departments to, sort of, how do you manage that data? And we were just asking them to help manage the TASER log data, which is not a lot of data. So the decision made on body cameras was thinking about what was happening with Apple and iTunes at the time. Like, and they were the ones who figured out a way in a consumer friendly manner have all this music in the cloud, and all you had was a digital player, and this is before the iPhone, right before the iPhone, and you didn't have to think about how all those songs were managed. You didn't have to think about having uploading all your vast music collection to your hard drive so you can listen to it or download it to an MP3 player at the time. Like they figured out that model, and we simply copied that model and said, if we're going to have all of this video data coming, departments cannot manage that on their own. It's just, it is impossible. And so we never went on prem from the beginning, meaning on premises. We never we just knew that after sort of looking at this will be the wrong decision. And so everyone sort of gives us credit for body cameras. There's really body cameras and cloud software at the same time that changed sort of a lot of things that came after that.
No, it's incredible of the evolution and seeing this start from 93 up to 2025. And we're going to get into some of what's on the horizon, but I do want to touch on the transparency and accountability. I mean, you are on a show called Bridging the Divide between the law enforcement community and the communities they serve. And I think that's the body cam and also the preservation of the evidence or the encounters is a big part of having better relations with the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I a couple of things there that we're very proud of. We established an AI ethics board back in 20. We sort of designing it in 17, really 2018, and they were helping us think through. Obviously, we had acquired 2 AI companies at the time. Again, think about this. This is like early days. Like, and they were like, "Why'd you acquire those 2 AI companies?" Like, you couldn't. And we did it for like redaction and a few other things, plus to get the talent. But that was obviously too, like, an early move that didn't seem like the right move. Like no one understood at the time. But we also knew like we had to have outsiders. Let's just call them perhaps those who don't always agree with our police customers, provide us some unvarnished views on things that we build. Now, that board ultimately blew up when we announced that we're going to do a TASER drone. Challenge with that board was we had put a bunch of academics on there, professors and others who weren't fundamentally grounded in communities, and especially Black and brown communities, where there may be over policing or under policing. And so, and they also misjudged the TASER drone thing. So, and we can come back to that. But we quickly reformed the board because we knew the mistake we made, and we call it our Ethics and Equity Advisory Committee, and it is made up primarily of Black and brown voices from communities affected by crime and violence. And we've designed this board to operate within our product team. So our product managers, and again, I told you before, like we seek feedback from everybody, from turn order police to officers on the street to supervisors to administrators, all the way up to leadership. So we're constantly seeking that feedback. And like I told you, we had these prosecutors in this week at our headquarters. We also had 42 police chiefs or police leaders in headquarters this week too. Now, their job is our product manager. So if you're a product manager, your job is to help see a feature or a product from beginning to end. And so our product managers come and present to this committee, and they seek feedback about, well, how this and they provide some really important feedback on how we should think about our products. Doesn't mean we always take their views, but we run it through that lens that helps us better understand, and that we can build products that serve police and the communities that police serve. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Transparency is one. I'll mention that in a second in terms of how we think about helping make a lot of our tools transparent to the communities that you guys serve. But the other is on AI. We rolled out something we call Draft One, which writes the first draft of a police report. And it takes the body camera data, excuse me, it takes the body camera audio, not the video, just the audio, sends it to the cloud. It transcribes everything that was said between that officer, a witness, or suspect, whatever's happening on that scene. So you have the transcript of everything that was said, and then we layer an AI model on top of that, and it very quickly produces a police report, shoots it back down within seconds. It is, when you first see it, and I'm too used to it now, it is, people were literally saying this is like magic because you couldn't believe this was happening. We thought about this like in 2017, 18, 19, like, oh, one day the body camera will help an officer write their police report, because no officer wants to write it. No one joined the Dallas Police Department to have to go sit behind a computer or an MDT and spend hours on their shift writing a police report, right? They want to be out in the community doing the things that they signed up for. So like we found that this new feature called Draft One, which uses AI, is saving departments anywhere from 50 to 80% of time of officers having to write police reports, and it's doing lots of other things as well. I mean, it is, officers very quickly, very quickly figured out, and you know this, officers are super smart. Like, they figured out the more they articulate, the better their police report would be. So all of a sudden you got, like, you're seeing in some departments who are doing the research, community satisfaction increasing because the officer, and this is, we didn't think about this is a byproduct because officers are super smart. Like, this is a byproduct. If they're articulating more during something happening, like, it's just, like, we know that's sort of part of procedural justice, explaining why they got pulled over or why they did this or why are they doing this. Like, that just, like, that is great stuff, and things that we've been trying to get officers, not we, I mean, that is the profession, as you know, to say more, like, you tell them more of what you're doing and they understand it, and it calms the situation down. So, but our equity and ethics advisory committee, again, mostly black and brown faces, had a concern early days as we're presenting this to them. Like, what about what about the bias in the AI models? All right, let's run a test. So they worked with a couple of professors or researchers who run essentially a lab that tries to understand policing and racism. So we went to a lab that is already predisposed to try to understand this. And they found, interesting enough, we would feed video into it, and they would find, and we would change the race of the suspect, and it would say if the suspect was white, and this is one clear example I remember, it was the white man left the scene, and if it was a black suspect, it said the black suspect fled the scene. Did he leave? Did he leave the scene, or did he flee the scene? Obviously, that is a big deal. Seems subtle, but a big deal. But understanding that, which will only surface because we're having these conversations with community members who think about these things, we were able to tune down the AI model. We could do these things, and we tuned it down to such a level where the model only, it's not a technical term, gives you the most vanilla language. It takes out the adverbs and adjectives. It uses just the most generic language, and then the officer can go back in and tune it up. Like, if it says it walked away, that he ran, then the officer is reading the report. He just changes walk to run. But that is something we found, and that is because, like, seeking input from that committee and others like that, and it's something we're very proud of. And you know, we sometimes we take some daggers for that, which I'm proud to always stand up and defend that, because we support police. We believe in the goodness of police, but you certainly want to hear from those who may have different views. And it has made us a better company, has made our products better, and has ultimately helped the officers on the street. When it comes to transparency and accountability, like, they push us, like, and we're going through this right now with rolling out software around real-time crime centers. We have USIS, which is primarily, it is sort of the leader in real-time crime center software out there today. Or, you know, as we continue to do the work that we're doing in license plate readers, how can we help departments be more transparent about how they're using that technology, which some might call it surveillance technologies, but we're doing it in a more thoughtful way, like taking input like that. But also, like, in the thing that we are working on right now is, but how can you show the resolution of how you're using this technology? Because today, most of it is, let's just say, take license plate readers. If you're posting on a portal to show the community how you're using license plate readers, and it only shows, you know, this city had 200,000 license plate reads last year, and it doesn't tell the outcome of those reads, like what did you do with those reads, then it's going to paint a very different picture. So when we think about transparency and accountability when it comes to those types of things, it's also listening to and this is what we heard from folks from the field, from real-time crime centers, to officers who, depend on license plate, or investigators who depend on LPRs or other, again, quote unquote, surveillance technologies. They're super important, but if you don't tell the right story and you're trying to be transparent, then you're only going to paint police into a bad light and not show the complete context of how you're using those technologies. So the transparency piece doesn't work unless you're painting the picture of what's actually happened. So we think about that, one, showing how police departments are using it, or let me rephrase that, providing departments with, you decide how transparent you want to be, but we have to figure out also how to help you tell that story about not just how you're using it, but what the outcomes are when you use that technology, those technologies.
Well, I'm glad that we talked about the collaborating with all the voices, because we whatever role we play in the community, we are all still one ecosystem. We just play different roles, and I think it is important to give them a voice, and you can get a lot of information and data to progress any technology or any policy or any practice.
Mm-hmm. For sure, without a doubt. That's I was at a meeting not too long ago, a few months ago, and just taking questions from the audience, and one officer stood up and really just gave it to me about this board, this ethics and equity advisory committee. Because the name in today's world, even using the word equity, sort of has become sort of the anti-woke culture and everything else, which we don't get involved in politics, but he was giving it to me like, how dare you, seek those voices out and then listen to those voices and have that, impact what you're giving us. And first of all, I love the spirited conversation and the spirited debate. I think is only good for the profession, as it only makes us better as a company. I love that. Others in the audience were quite shocked, but I'm like, this is great. We want to have this conversation, and the conversation is just like and I kept just going back at him and saying, look, we understand who our customer base is. We understand what you do, what those officers on the street do at midnight or 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., what those supervisors are encountering, what those investigators are doing, what they have to do to bring justice to families. We talk to police all day long. I mean, that is literally my job. And we have teams that do it. And we have this, what we call a customer first attitude. We're always thinking about, how do we put you first, not anything else, in the things that we do. But that does mean listening to other voices that may have concerns, to head off things that may jam up a police department when it comes to technology, because it's a serious business. I mean, you have the right. Police in the U.S. have the constitutional right to take away someone's life or liberty. And no one else can do that. You can't use the U.S. military here and domestically. Now, we'll get today's argument, what's happening in the country, but you get law enforcement is the only one that can do that. The U.S. Police Department, that is, and we're designing technology where there's less lethal devices, like our TASER devices, body cameras, software, LPRs, what partnership with Ring, where you're ingesting all this other data. Then we have to take that, and everybody in this industry has to take that, and understand that, and then build products that, one, help you do your job better, but also understand where things could go off the rails and try to prevent that from happening. One, to protect officers and protect communities.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. But want to get into VR training, and then also I'm very fascinated with it because I understand I'm in the wellness unit, and we actually have used VR training for to improve officers' mental health and their wellness.
Yep. Yeah, VR training is the future without a doubt. It's sort of full stop and across the board. And we're probably in our second or third generation of VR training. For those who sort of bought the first or second generation. We thank you for your partnership. And it was a rough start. But like, let me just pause here. Like the reason we make these bets and we think just like on that AI could write the first draft of police report from the body camera is because, and across the company, we think and because we still have our founder and CEO, Rick. He's been with us from the beginning. Like, and he is just back to my conversation, back to how I ultimately ended up coming to the TASER than Axon. Like, just as how he thinks about the evolving nature of technology and public safety technology. Like we talk about this all the time. Like the exponential growth of technology and this sort of law of accelerating returns. Like technology is not evolving on a linear pattern, 1+1=2. Like it's evolving on an exponential pattern. So whether it's AI when we started in 2017 or whether it's VR, we knew that where we started is not where it's going to be next year or the year after or the year after that. So we get in early for something that we believe in. VR is one of those things. So the first couple of generations, kind of janky. But now it is starting to smooth out because AI is enabling just incredible virtual reality training. Now we do a lot of it for TASER training. That is the future of TASER. Because today you've been through this, you might train on the TASER device once a year, and you might fire a few darts. Darts are expensive. Like we can't help that the way they're built, and so like it is expensive. And also, you probably just fire it at a static target. You might have a guy in a big halt suit running around, and you're firing at that. But still, you do not fire a TASER device like you fire your handgun. You don't go to the range, and you don't. So you will never be as proficient at a TASER device as you are at a handgun, but just because of the practice that you get. That's one area where we see VR making the biggest difference today. And we've actually designed VR training that we call the TASER range, where you put on the VR headset and you are in a virtual reality range, getting repetitions on that TASER device. Now, there's other scenarios that we do in terms of situations that officers may get themselves in, but right now,
de-escalation.
But the VR training alone, Rick said he learned more in 5 minutes in that VR range shooting a TASER device than he did in 30 years of shooting an actual TASER. And that is starting to make a fundamental difference and getting us to a point where we're seeing the effectiveness of departments using TASERs and TASER 10 especially up in the 90% range. And there's a number of reasons, but VR is part of it. One quick example, and I'm going to come to the wellness because I'm passionate about this, and I do believe you're right. Like VR is I think that's where we make the difference. Finally start making a real difference in officer safety and wellness or officer wellness. We had an officer in Lincoln, Nebraska, who they had our new TASER 10 devices. TASER 10, fundamental shift in all prior TASER devices. And again, this is why I love this company. We had TASER 7 at the time. We could have made a TASER 8 that was just slightly better than TASER 7 and sold a bunch of them. And then we could have made a TASER 9 that was slightly better than TASER 8 and continued to sell TASER devices across the country and the world. What Rick challenged the team to do is, and this is where we came up with our own moonshot idea, and it gets back to the founding of the company and sort of the origins of this. We have to do a better job at providing officers with a better TASER device that they have confidence to use so they don't have to use lethal force. And we know in about 41% of all fatal officer-involved shootings, that involves a threat, a suspect, person who has a knife or edged weapon. So that's sort of become an anchoring point. Like, how can we give officers a better device there? And there's other scenarios for sure that we could start helping officers in departments and communities, improve upon. Like, this, you could be doing the best things in the community. You can have the best community policing programs, partnerships, doing all the right things. If you have a bad fatal officer-involved shooting, like that just destroys that trust that's been building up for a long time. And not only that, destroys the officer, that life of that officer, his family, everything else. So anyway, we put a lot of TASER 10 is a 10-shot device, and is again, fundamentally different. One trigger pull per dart. So you're no longer trying to do trigonometry to get 2 darts on the target with one trigger pull. Now it's just
Right.
like your weapon, bam, bam. So this officer in Lincoln, Nebraska, just gets her taser 10. And that morning, which we didn't know at the time, that morning she goes through the VR training on taser 10, which again is a virtual range where you're shooting at in VR. You're shooting a suspect running, walking, hiding under a thing. You're shooting at someone because the taser 10's effectiveness range is up to 45 feet, which is an incredibly long distance away, or point blank. So she just put the VR headset on that morning, goes out on patrol. They get a call for a suspect who's having in a mental health crisis. Get him all the time, right? Guy's got a knife, and they're talking. They're trying to de-escalate. The situation is playing out over time. Like this is not like a bam bam, and he's far off, and they're talking. He keeps walking back and forth. She's got 2 cover officers. At one point in the conversation, that's it. He starts charging, running at a full sprint with the knife at her. And again, she's got 2 cover officers there because these things have been unfolding. She has her taser 10 out. She takes the shot at 32 feet. And the suspect goes down. They get him under control. They get him to psychiatric treatment. Now, you and I know, and everybody in that room knows, if she didn't have the confidence to use that taser weapon in that situation, and we hadn't provided the technology that allowed her to use it at such a distance, because before the sort of the Goldilocks zone was like 6 to 12 feet. And you know, by 6 to 12 feet, like that's too close to have somebody running at you with a knife.
Yes.
But she took that shot at 32 feet. He goes down to get him under control, get help, resolve that situation. If she had not had the confidence to do that, going through that VR training that morning, we all know that would have been a fatal officer shooting. They would have had taken that guy's life. So we like that things that we hear that that's just one example. We hear it over and over again. That's why we believe VR is the future of training, and we are heavily invested in thinking about how we do VR training, just not on taser devices, but all the way up, as you mentioned, to mental health. And I just saw a demo yesterday by one of our partner companies using a virtual reality. It's called an avatar, and talking to an officer who had PTSD and had suicidal ideation. Now, this is early days, early prototypes. But in watching that, and also, I mean, this is a real officer. Like this is not like an employee doing this. Someone who has already had treatment and everything else, but he's into officer wellness space. Like watching that demo and the virtual reality component of it, and you can see it going to augmented reality soon. Without a doubt, at that moment, I'm like, this will be the future of trying to, really make a dent and really make significant strides in helping officers out who they have PTSD and everything else that goes on because of what you do on the job. So yeah, we see that as the future. And I personally have seen things. I'm like, in a year or two, like we'll be treating officers differently or trying to help them seek treatment differently than we are today because of VR or AR, which is augmented reality.
No, I'm excited to see where that goes, especially being in the role that I'm in now, because I see the benefit. I've already seen the benefit from VR in this unit. So,
and I would say in the one, you know it better than I do. But I've seen the research. I mean, the good news is, like today, and there's research that came out probably 4 or 5 months ago. Like the number of officer wellness programs has exploded across the country, which is great. Like recognizing that there's a problem, recognizing that we need to provide resources to officers
finally,
who see things that I don't, you have, that most people would never see, and not understanding how traumatic it is, the number of things that they see over the course of a career. So finally, there and then I forget the exact number, but the number of programs that departments have today, like it's not just one; they could have up to 3. And I think the challenge, and you know this better than I do, and maybe this is where VR comes into it. There's still the stigma around seeking or asking for help, and you again, more of a question for you. Like I'm hoping VR, AR is sort of that more personalized thing where you're actually, talking essentially to a robot, but a very realistic robot might finally break that barrier in terms of the stigma that talking to a real human does. I don't know, but I think there's something there, and I think there's going to be research around that shows like this is a more effective way to seek treatment.
No, I believe it is the future, like you said. But also, speaking of future, you have a lot of emerging tech, and I was looking at my notes. You have DFR at scale and the AI co-pilots. Can you kind of get into some of that? That's going to be the future of Axon, and you're going to be looked at as a standard to developing these.
Sure, I'd say we talked about TASER, how we started the TASER company, the transition to body cameras and software, cloud software. I think we're sort of on our third turn as a company, which is quite incredible. Think about lasting this long as a company, like, and now trying and sort of and try to stay ahead of these trends and understanding these trends so that we better support you. I think that in that third turn, if you will, and what we're in right now is AI, artificial intelligence, and we believe just as a society that we're in this AI era. And if if you listen to our podcast, which you mentioned, Rick and I do the Boldly Go podcast, we do this AI episode, and like we're in just as big of a societal upheaval and change today, and it's hard to see it because you're in it, as farmers were heading into the Industrial Revolution. So if you think about everything that happened in their Industrial Revolution, we don't ride horses anymore. We have cars. Like everything that happened, people moved to cities. They don't live on farms anymore. Like manufacturing, like we're there, and that changed a lot of how society was structured. We're in it right now with AI, and so what we're trying to do is understand those trends for one, but also stay ahead of that trend and build technologies that support what officers do out in the communities, and whether that's helping keep officers safe or not, whether there's no dichotomy, keeping officers safe, helping them do their jobs, making them more effective, and keeping communities safe at the same time. And we made this switch. It was June of last year, June of 2024. We had a meeting with a small group of police leaders, and it was like a brainstorming session. And and Rick was showing all the crazy things he was doing in his personal life, or using an app on his phone he had just gotten back from Italy. He was very proud that he translated his whole presentation using his iPhone and an app from English to Italian, and the police leaders in Italy were speaking back to him as doing the translation. Like he was, and it was cool, right? And then the chief of San Francisco, he goes, "Well, Rick, if you can do that on your iPhone, why can't we do that on a body camera?" Oh, right, you have a supercomputer. Every officer has a supercomputer on their chest right now. And then so we're like, well, what are some of the other ideas like that we should be doing with the body camera involving AI that would make a difference? And we'd already been working on draft one because we've been thinking about it for a while. And then I forget it was a sheriff, Texas, Sheriff Gonzalez, Harris County. I'm trying to remember, but he raised his hand, Ed Gonzalez. So he raised his hand. He goes, well, why can't you take all of our policies, upload it, or have us upload it, and then if an officer has a question about a policy, they can simply ask their body camera. And then we're like, well, that's not that sexy. Like, is that a big deal? Well, we didn't understand it, but we only understand it from talking to our customers. Like, yeah, that's actually a big deal, and that also consumes a lot of time and resources. So, like that in that moment in June of 2024, Rick gets on our internal comms and tells our leadership, the rest of the leadership and our product org, we're pulling the emergency brake on our entire product roadmap. Like, full stop. And I want you to tell me and show me how you're going to use AI to build better products for police. Now, there's 5,000 people in this organization and thousands in the R&D org of Axon. They have roadmaps. They have budgets. Like this is a big company now. This is not like the early days. And for Rick to do that was, it is shocking. Like that, you're like, stop what you're doing. We're making the full pivot to AI. So one, in terms of the future of what we do, it is all about AI, staying ahead of the trend and trying to understand how AI will help make better technologies for you and for communities. And it could be things that are just mundane work that has to get done. And that's actually where we started. And that's why we started with the first draft of a police report, because no officer likes to write a police report. How can we take that off of their, metaphorically, take it off their desk, to everything to understanding how you can use video to not just ingest the digital evidence of an encounter that just happened, but how do we do it to get ahead of that encounter? And how do you do it, for example, like if you back up before a call comes into 911 and all sorts of dispatched, how can you use AI and cameras and drones to get there before an officer's even dispatched, or you help officers start getting there before the 911 call is even complete? Like, how do you back this up and get ahead of it so you start preventing crime and making situations safer when the officer does come? Where there's still a variety of technologies, but drones are certainly going to be a part of that. And that's how we think about it. So it's not just like DFR, like how to use drones, or it's not just about cameras. It's not just about CCTV. It's like, how do you put all these pieces together, use AI to tie them all together in one seamless fashion? And not just us, by the way. Like we're open about our ecosystem. We don't want any police department to feel like you're being forced to use any one company. And so we work very hard to figure out, like, you may have us for something, you may have Motorola for something, you may have, you name the CCTV company that providing cameras. Like, how do you make sure it not just works together, but works for you? And part of that is AI helps us do that. And so that's how we're thinking about it in terms of a larger ecosystem now, and tying this all together. So, but yeah, we think drones are certainly the future, but it's the future because of AI, what you could do with AI and the autonomy that comes with that, and tying all these technologies together.
That's amazing. You just walked us through a very long history of this great company and how it's evolved and it has gone in different directions, Mike, in over decades now. And I want to ask you a final question to leave the listener with, both first responder community and as well as the civilians that are served, how your innovation will continue to shape safer, more transparent, and public safety be more effective leading into the next century.
Sure. Yeah, and thank you for having me on the show. It's been a great conversation. Look, our mission is to protect life, period. Protect life. And that's been the mission from the very beginning of the company. And if you walk into our headquarters right now, I mean, it's a very famous scene during the original moonshot, and JFK going to NASA, and he passes by a janitor who's got a broom in his hand and goes, "What is your job?" And the janitor tells President Kennedy, "Well, sir, my job is to put a man on the moon." If you walk into our headquarters, or we have offices throughout the country now, in Boston and Seattle and Atlanta and elsewhere. You walk into any office and say, "What is your job?" I don't care if it's the security guard out front, if it is the engineer working on some, perhaps, say, redaction software, or if it is somebody working on TASER weapons. They will tell you that their job and the job of Axon is to protect life. And that's what we'll always do and continue to do, so that we can support police across the country and across the world.